Hello everyone, Switch here. I decided to do another fair video about the cutie remark episode, but it was most part of Nightmare Moon. Ever since the episode came out, we're seeing many possible timelines that happened. After that, Starlight brought her and Twilight and Spike back in the past and back forward again in the ultimate timelines. I decided to focus on this one. And you may ask, why is I focus on this one? Well, let's say because of Nightmare Moon. She is a very interesting villain. That is I can say for certainly. But what about if that in a timeline where Nightmare Moon did manage to take over Equestria, how would the entire kingdom be after all this? But its most part, what about the main six? How would their lives been? What would they done during this new era or in this new rulement? That is something that we can focus on, but most because the episode itself. One of them is that in fact that Rarity is working for Nightmare Moon as her assistant, and that Rainbow is also working for her as one of her royal guards. So the question made me ask, what about the others? Pinky, Rarity, well, especially Pinky, Applejack, and Fluttershy. Well, Fluttershy, I'm not so certain about that. I mean, in every single timeline she was part of, she it was like she was very sensitive in almost every timeline. So maybe she were still as afraid as is in the main timeline. But otherwise from Pinky, well, I think there's a very most likely possibility that she was staying at the rock farm. Never seen the Sonic Rainbow. She never found her passion in parties. So this is very likely that she remained at the farm with her family. What about Applejack? I think that she still would have remained at the farm and was working there as normal, but under the rule of Nightmare Moon. But how about the rest of the question? Would have been any, I don't know, would there have been any terror or fear? Most likely, yes. Not because of the only as eternal night, but the most of Nightmare Moon's fear. I mean, who thought about it? Nightmare Moon as a ruler, but not that only. She rules the entire kingdom by most of an iron grasp of fear, making sure that no ponies will ever go start a rebellion against her rule, only to make sure that her guards is keeping check of all the entire population under control, so there will not be any sort of rebellion against her. So, how about the Equestria's role been after that she take over? This possibility that she might have been focused. Why? Say, let's say for about certainly from points there. Why then? What about Luna? Is she still inside that moon? And is she aware or unaware what's happening? I have to say that she is completely is aware of what's happened, and that she has been there a lot of time, and she has been planning on the moon if she managed to get back, and that she thought planning how to revenge her own sister if she managed. And in this timeline, she did manage to defeat her own sister and send her to the moon instead back herself. And except from that without the main six influence, or their impact in the past or in the future around the same time or earlier in the past when during the first Sonic Rainbow. If Sonic Rainbow didn't appear, nothing would they never been meeting. Twilight would never been sent to Ponyville and met her friends, and they would never have meeting each other. That would have meant Applejack would never met her friends. Pinky would never have met her friends. She would never have even left the farm. So, exactly what happened to the Equestria after Luna or Night and Moon came back? Well, in that particular episode, there weren't much details revealed. But let's assume that after she came back and managed to defeat her own sister without the main six were able even there, or even as friends. Without the main six, Night and Moon would have easily been able to defeat her own sister and send her to the moon as she had wished. And so from that point, she wouldn't be able to rule and to take over the entire kingdom without anyone against her rule. Knowing that she is an all-powerful alicorn, but mostly with the Night and Moon's abilities. So no ponies wouldn't be able to against fight her. And would it be some sort of rebellion against her in the 30 year after that she came back? I might have to say yes. There might have been some sort of protest against her role. Why suddenly that Luna has, or Night and Moon has sent Celestia to the moon for so long, and that she is explained that Celestia was a tyrant or something, that she was not that she, that Night and Moon was the rightful heir to the throne and not Celestia, and Celestia should have been banished to the moon even centuries ago. So even after that point, I don't think many opponents were questions about her rule, because either been sent to some sort of prison, or perhaps that tolerance for life, or perhaps in work in a hard place for months, like a labor camp, where you have to work on a farm for for your punishment or something. But how about the rest of Equestria doing her role? That is the one thing that we don't know for sure. But in this particular timeline, though, most of the main six, as we so far known as Rarity and Rainbow, working for Night and Moon. But would it be possible that Applejack could have been working for Night and Moon's as another royal guard? I think that is very likely that could have happened. Just think about it. Applejack is a strong pony and a strong earth pony. And it's likely that she could have been spotted by some of the guards and either by force or recruited her by her own choice, rather than being a farmer, and that even that she has either be given choice, work as a royal guard and get to paid a lot of money, and that it could support your family, or just continue to live in a meaningless farmer without a son that we're unable to grow any food. Or what if that one of the first things that Diamond Moon did was to increase her own size of force, not as a power, but her guard size. What if that she managed to gather was putting a new guard size, that she decided to increase her roller guard size, that increased the numbers to make sure that not all opponents were in idle to be taken over. And especially, what did happen during this particular timeline about the rest of part of history? As far we know that the Crystal Empire, came back after being banished for 1,000 years by Sombra, putting a curse on the entire city. So if that empire did come back, and Sombra did come back as well, and he claimed the empire for himself once again, would that been some sort of threat to Night and Moon's rule? I think that would have been a big threat to her rule. But let's say if there were some treaty between Sombra and Night and Moon, ensuring that Sombra would not invade Equestria and that Night and Moon would not send any of her forces too near the borders to the Empire. So let's say assume there were a treaty between them. It's like a peace treaty that makes sure they stayed with their own empire, their own territories. As long as they don't cross any to try to invade or any try to do any sort of action of war against each other nations, they would stay there within their own territories. That is the only thing I think is possibility. And that would mean that Sombra would be able to rule the empire by without any threat from Night and Moon. Even though this is very likely that even if there were some sort of peace treaty between them, there would still be paranoid between each later, saying the paranoid thinking that Night and Moon by secret would have been planning some sort of invasion plan to take over the empire, or that at least for Night and Moon thinking, okay, Sombra is planning something in secret. Maybe I sent some sort of ambassador or a spy in secret. But even if that spy would have been detected, that would have been violent against the treaty, and that would have meant that Sombra would have given all the rights, all means to invade Equestria. And that's the same thing for Night and Moon. So if they did manage to keep themselves in check, only remain in their each territories, that would mean that. What about Discord? Would he have been returned? No. Because we saw in the episode the Curie remark, Discord wasn't even apparent in that particular timeline. Because without the main six of that, the Curie Crusaders never freed him from in the first place. So that is likely that he still remained in stone. Or very or otherwise, maybe that he remained in stone. Or that Night and Moon had to make sure that he would never be freed from the stone imprisonment and destroyed the statue of Discord so that he would never come back. That seems might be a little bit dark. I admit that. But let's say if that is true. But if Discord did come back, what if say that he did come back, but she and that Night and Moon and Discord come along with some sort of agreement that he was given a part of Equestria where he can do anything he wants to do, like his own personal kingdom. As long as he doesn't do an interfere with Night and Moon's her part of Equestria, like what she did with Below Sombra. So let's say that Equestria is split in two halves. One part for Night and Moon's rule, and one part for Discord's rule. That would make sense, even that part. Even if he can't come back. So, what about happen after that? What did that, if the Twilight were remained in this particular timeline? What about her? Without Celestia as her teacher, where did she be? Very likely in Candelot. Maybe. But if this timeline strategy managed to get back in Candelot, is it very likely that Candelot would never have been built? Because in the timeline that we see, that Celestia were sent to the moon the first time 1,000 years ago during their first battle, and that she lost. And then she came back, but she was sent back to the moon. No, she was sent to the moon 1,000 years ago, but never came back. And that would make sure that that's one reason that Canterlot would never been built, because the city was built after the old castle was abandoned. Since the battle itself was over, and Night and Moon make orders to rebuild the castle and restore it. So that would have meant Canterlot would never have been built in the first place. So that means either way that the Twilight were alive. Even that timeline, she could have been lived somewhere else. Maybe she was part of maybe she was part of maybe she were a scholar teacher or something, maybe under the Night Moon's rule. But we cannot say for certain about that, because much about this information is very much vaguely or just much as a theory. But what happened to Night Moon when she came back after the first battle, or that when she did win battle? How much did she pay much attention about her kingdom after this? Well, let's assume that she did manage to bring back some of her own powers. She focused mostly because to control her kingdom. So that no she might make sure that there were no rebellion. And that since if the police were against her, we sent some sort of prison or some sort of camps where they even teach not to fight against her rule. I think even she was more as a villain ruler, but that she would have been justified against those not being ruling much. And you may ask why I finally think about that? Well, let's see first that for dark parts in points. Even even evil rulers would have made sure the people were not against any rebellion. Because if you suddenly kill most of many of their own population, the rest of the population might be fair, and that may also increase the rebellion chances against her. So if she just put them in some sort of camps to teaching them and release them after some time, like say send them to prison for let's say for a few months, maybe to a year or so, and back out again, make sure that her role is not against. But though I might be wrong in that part, but how did her ruling did take place even so much long? How did the entire kingdom react that Luna took over and this was only internal night? Well, at first maybe those generations that lived during the time of the battle and that Luna won, I think they were having really really terrified. But as the years passed, as generation after generation came and gone, ponies might again get used to that this entire eternal night and never been able to see the sun again. And that means that they would have to find other ways to go to get light, like lanterns and sort of things. But more the question is that how about most other part? You might think, okay, this might be really, really weird thinking. How about that entire kingdom based on from that point of view? Because since the episode didn't show much of the entire kingdom, no, only parts of but mostly around the forest, and the timber wolves, for example, they were no match for Nightmare Moon. No, just one blast of her magic, they were literally destroyed. But doing that were a way for her to spin that her rule could have been stopped. She would know she would do anything to maintain her power, and that nothing would have stopped it, even meaning that her own past, that if something were an altered timeline, make sure that her rule would never be altered. So I'm saying though, what about after that she came back? How would all things happen in the High Kingdom? Would they have been like suddenly one morning, well, when the pony is waking up, it's still dark, and they figure out when the zenith time is still early in the morning, and they wait, and it turns out midday, like 12 noon, and it's still dark, and after that they will find out that Luna or Night Moon had won against Celestia, and Celestia were on the moon for a thousand years or forever, who knows? But how would life itself been developed around Equestria during this particular time? Without sunlight, that would mean no growing of crops, unless that unicorns had found a way to alight some sort of artificial sun, so that and some sort of artificial light, so that crops or some farmers could maintain their lives there, like Applejack's family. So Would it have been any some sort of rebellion or some protest against Night Moon during the first after she came back? I have to admit that very likely there had been some sort of smaller scale of rebellion against her rule, but even after 1,000 years, most of that has been as an all lost, forgotten memory, and that ponies are again used to the rule, and they obey her no matter what happens. I have to say though, that is the only thing I can say for certain could happen, because even if we don't know much about that particular episode itself, even about that particular timeline, there were some vague story part of that even if she came back, Luna won, Celestia lost, and was sent to the moon for 1,000 years, and even during her current timeline, or in the current time when the Twilight and Spike came back to the future, finding out that Luna had been ruling Equestria for 1,000 years without her own sister. Knowing that mistake, going back to try to stop it once again. But I had to admit that particular timeline were very interesting. Could that have happened if Luna did? If the Could that timeline happen for real? If Starlight did manage to stop the first Sonic Rainbow, I had to say yes, because. And what about the rest of main six? Because Applejack would likely been under in service of Night Moon as Rarity and Rainbow. What about Pinky? Well, she might have still been at the farm. Without the Rainbow, she would never have seen that mean and the got this feeling for parties and anything. And about Fluttershy, well, she might have been either in the service of um, Night Moon at some point as well, if with some particular position. But we don't know for sure about that for 100% sure. But if I had to say, the most likely candidate to still work for service for Night Moon is Applejack as well, to some point. Anyways, what about the most part? How did Celestia lose the battle? Well, even if she did use the elements, or perhaps if she was going to use the elements, but Luna or Night Moon used someone's magic against her that made her unconscious, and at the same time managed to send her to Moon, and perhaps even buried the elements somewhere so they would never be found and used against her again. Even that is true. It is very likely that even after Luna has sent her own sister away, it is likely that Luna would have made sure no pony would have threatened her rule, like make a peace treaty with Sombra, so that he could still maintain his control of the Empire and she can control of her own part and her Christian. And even if the Discord somehow managed to get back from the Stone Prison, and that he was given a part of Equestria as his own personal kingdom, that he can do anything he wants as long as he doesn't interfere with Night moves of her control. That is as far as I think that could happen. Because we wouldn't show much about the scenes about the rest of Equestria, or at least at Ponyville, in that particular timeline. But anyways, exactly what happened next may never be revealed, but at least we know for sure that Luna's power, as we saw in that particular timeline, what happened. But if you have your own opinions or at least about what you thought could happen, let me know in the comment section below. And as always, subscribe, leave a comment, and as always, this is Switch W, over and out.